Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to week 3 of your weekly movie rewind here with me, your host, Garret, Neal, and as always, you are listening to Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. We have a big week in movies today, this week, last week, whatever, whenever the news was. As always, we'll go over the box office first. We have a lot of news that I want to touch on this week. The awards season is in full swing, as a lot of you know, I'm sure, the Oscar nominations were announced this morning, so I will, of course, be going through those as well as some other awards that happened over the weekend, and then I will end off the show with the new releases, of which there are 2. One is an expansion, and I do have a top 5. It's a bottom 5 list this week, but I do have a top 5 because I was smart and I did my new release notes in advance, so I was ready and prepared fully with those before, and then I did the box office notes this morning, and I'm all set. So without further ado, let's go into that box office. And Jumanji, staying strong in week 5, still atop the box office for the 3rd week in a row. It brought in just under $20 million this weekend. It was down about 30% in 3,700 theaters, and that's going to bring its total gross to $3,016 and $3,016, and $500,000, which moves it to 5th in all-time Sony grossing films behind I'm going to blow your mind really quick here with what's behind. It's going to be behind Spider-Man at number 1 Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire, and number 2 is going to be Spider-Man 2, and number 3 is going to be Spider-Man 3, and number 4 is going to be Spider-Man Homecoming. But to mix it up, the one that was in 5 before this was Skyfall. So it wasn't a Spider-Man movie. The next Spider-Man movie is all the way down at number 7 now, which is The Amazing Spider-Man. But it's still incredible to think that Jumanji's made it all the way up here, even though its opening weekend was just about $36 million, when all the other movies in that top 5 are 88 at the lowest. Spider-Man 2 was 88. Spider-Man 1 and 3 were both in the low to mid 100 millions, and even Skyfall was around 88 million. So considering how low it started, Jumanji's ability to hold has been incredible. As I've said before, it's just such an enjoyable, rewatchable movie, and it hasn't really had much competition outside of its first few weeks when it was dealing with Star Wars. But then, as I will talk about more later, Star Wars was a very front-loaded film. But moving right along to number 2 is 12 Strong, out of nowhere, the new release. Thor, Chris Hemsworth coming up big with $16.5 million, which was more than it was estimated by the studio. Studio estimated at about $15 million, so that's a bit of a surprise there. The declassified but true story of the Horse Soldiers, 12 Strong. Yeah, I've not seen that one. I didn't see any of the new releases this weekend because they didn't interest me, and I'm doing some Oscar catch up. Hopefully by next week I'll at least have seen all the Best Picture nominations. But this one is apparently one that audiences are enjoying a lot more than critics did. It has an A cinema score, so that's impressive. But even more impressive is Den of Thieves, which is all the way at number 3. For those of you that don't remember, this one is starring Gerard Butler and O'Shea Jackson Jr., a.k.a. Ice Cube Jr. He doesn't actually go by that, but that's the easy way to remember if you don't remember his actual name. And this one was projected in the single-digit millions, and it went to 15.2 million, with just below 12 Strong, and that's just again, especially considering this is splitting an audience with 12 Strong, which are both R-rated action films, I'm very surprised that both of these did so well. Den of Thieves has a B+ cinema score, again, another one critics didn't love, but apparently audiences are liking. This one has, so Gerard Butler, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the high-ranking guy in the LA police, and then O'Shea Jackson is part of a heist team who are robbing a Federal Reserve Bank, and there's a big clash there, and apparently people are liking it. Maybe I'll be able to check it out at some point, but right now still gotta catch up on Oscar movies. And after I finish catching up Oscar movies, there's a certain Marvel film that'll be coming out in February that I'll want to see then. But we'll see. Coming in at number 4 in its second week of wide release is The Post, which made $11.7 million. Which is about a 40% drop from last week, which was, again, its first week in wide release. That one got a Best Picture nomination for the Oscars, but it won't win. It's not gonna win anything. But still, that one is one I do have to see still for as far as the Oscar ones go. And then at number 5, once again, The Greatest Showman continues to hang around. It's also in its 5th week, along with Jumanji. This one made 11.7 million. Excuse me, 10.7 million. Only a 15% drop from last week, and that brought its total up to 113.1 million. And one thing I noted, I should say, as always, these are the domestic totals via Box Office Mojo, and on something that I saw on Screen Junkies, a Screen Junkies YouTube video that I was watching earlier, is that the Greatest Showman has made 12 times, over 12 times its original opening box office. And when you're talking about the like, this is just a way to see how front loaded a film is, or how long its legs are. And a good film usually does, about 3 or 4 times its opening. 4 is probably is pretty solid legs, but this one is 12 times, more than 12 times its opening weekend. Its opening weekend was $8.8 million, and which was that Sunday was Christmas Eve, which is never a big movie day, so it was a little bit of a depressed opening weekend. But still, the fact that it's like hung around there and done even more than that for these last few weeks has been very fun to see, because it's a movie that I enjoyed very much. And that 12 times puts it, I think it was like 12.6 or something, I want to say, but that put it at second overall, according to this Screen Junkies video, if you ever want to go check it out on their YouTube channel. Second all time to Titanic, which had about 20 times its opening weekend over the course of its run. And I was looking at like theater counts at one time, and I just went back to the year I was born, which was 1998, because I wanted to see what was the biggest movie in theaters then. And Titanic held the most theaters for like 6 months in 1998, which is insane that it was able to not just stay in theaters that long, but it was at like 3,000 theaters forever. But also, speaking of multiplying, Star Wars The Last Jedi, which did come in at number 8 this week with about 6.5 million, a 44% drop off from last week, and it lost 600 theaters this weekend as it continues to lose those going into week 6. Is that if it's tracking just below where Rogue One tracked, or where Rogue One ended up finishing. And if it continues to go along where it's paced, it will finish with just under 3 times its opening weekend, which will be the only Star Wars film of not just the new, like all the Star Wars films to have less than 3 times its opening weekend, which, I mean, that's just shows how front-loaded this movie was. and I really, it's still made, over $600 million domestic, which is a ridiculous amount of money, and it's still doing incredibly well. It's still technically it's a 2017 film because it came out in 2017. It made the most money of any film in 2017, but I just really hope that Disney kind of takes a look at this, and a lot of this is coming out of like the negative word of mouth, the negative backlash that came out of it, and also I think a lot of the people that would go to see Star Wars multiple times are the big fans, which are a large percentage of the population that I think was kind of disgusted with some of the things that happened in this movie. But I hope that this might show Disney that it might be good to give audiences a little bit of time to breathe in between these films, even though, yes, we have only an episode of Star Wars every 2 years, but we still have a Star Wars movie in that year in between, and even so, between the episodes, it might be nice to have 3 or 4 years, which, yes, some people might just be like, but I want another Star Wars movie, but if they let it wait a little more, that not only gives them more time to work on the movie, which is almost always a good thing, but it really allows that hype train to build up, which is something that obviously contributed to how well The Force Awakens did. And so that's going to be the top 5 in the box office. Just wanted to mention that thing about Star Wars. Phantom Thread got a big expansion this week, and that made $3.2 million. It's still in around 896 theaters. That's another one of the Best Picture nominations that I still have to see. And another one that got a big expansion was Call Me By Your Name, which that one got an additional 641 theaters, put in 815, and that one made just under 1.5 million. That one I did see this weekend, and I thought it was okay. I know I'm not a big Oscar movie fan. The types of movies that tend to get nominated for Best Picture and for most of the big awards are not generally films that I'm huge on, because I find that most of them are very slow paced. This one I found was glacially paced. There were so many times where the last 3 or 4 seconds or 5 seconds of a shot would just be lingering on the Italian countryside, and I would just be like, I get it. It looks beautiful, but I'm ready for more stuff to happen in this film. There were other things that happened, but some of that, I just think I was focusing on some of the wrong things in that film, and I was asking questions that I thought the movie brought up, but it didn't really mean to. Anyway, sorry, that was a strange tangent that I didn't really mean to go on. Moving on to the news. I'm going to get to some of the smaller awards news, and then I'm going to take a break before we get to the Oscar news, because gotta keep people through that commercial break with the big stuff. But the SAGs, the Screen Actors Guild Awards, were over the weekend. Some of the big awards there were the Best Actor was Gary Oldman, which I don't think surprises anybody. He, for Darkest Hour, that had a lot of Oscar buzz when it came out, and it kind of died down, but it's him coming back recently as he won the Golden Globe. Now he won this. He's probably going to win the Oscar. Best Actress was Frances McDormand. Again, won the Golden Globe, won this. Probably going to win the Oscar as well, but we'll see. Sam Rockwell also won the Golden Globe, supporting actor. 3 Billboards is just racking these things in. And then supporting actress was Allison Janney from I, Tonya, played Tonya Harding's mother. I also saw I, Tonya this weekend, and she's hilarious. She is a very not a very good mother to Tonya Harding as far as the film portrays it, and she beat out one of the other kind of early favorites was Laurie Metcalf as Lady Bird's mother in Lady Bird. But that seems to be dying down, and Allison Janney is kind of bringing them in now. And the Screen Actors Guild Awards are generally a pretty decent Oscar predictor as far as the acting awards go. So that was that. And then the Producers Guild Awards, the PGAs named The Shape of Water as the best film of the year. And we shall see how well that predicts the Oscars. I think at this point, the Oscar... Okay, I'll get to the Oscar race. I don't want to go into that too much, but I just thought those were notable to bring up. And then the Razzies nominations also came out this weekend. Of course, these are for the worst films, the most notable bad films, or the most notable bad film awards. They did some strange things as far as I mean, they went really hard with Mother. It has an exclamation point on it, but they went really hard in on that, which was a very divisive film. And I think they're kind of like like a month or so late on kind of the hate train on Mother, which while was a very strange film from what I've heard, I don't know that I would really say it's bad. I definitely would not say Jennifer Lawrence was one of the best actresses, worst actresses of the year. And I just feel like a lot of the movies that they nominated were like, okay, so for the worst picture, they nominated Baywatch, The Emoji Movie, 50 Shades Darker, The Mummy, and Transformers: The Last Night. They also wrote Transformers as Transformers 17 because why not? I think it was like the fifth one, but they exaggerated because humor. None of those are good movies for sure. Fortunate for me, I have not gotten to the point where I can see every movie, so I have chosen to go to some better films than these ones. But by all accounts, these are not good movies. But were they really like the worst? I think they might have been like some of the worst big name movies, but even some slightly lesser known. But I mean, obviously you can find some just like random movies that like suck, but they could have done a little bit digger deeping, and especially I think like through the other categories, almost all of them are from the same movies. I mean, we got Dakota Johnson nominated for Worst Actress for 50 Shades Darker. Jennifer Lawrence, as I said, got nominated for that as well. And Emma Watson for The Circle. I'm like, I don't know if that movie was that bad, and I'm sure she was just fine in that. They nominated Tyler Perry as Worst Actress for Boo 2, A Medea Halloween, which I actually thought that was like a little funny. But one of the things I definitely wanted to talk about was Worst Actor. Johnny Depp for Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales. This is a series that is near and dear to my heart. The first one is one of my top 5 favorite films of all time. Very much like the second and the third one. I even like the fourth one. And my gosh, did I hate the fifth one. And Johnny Depp was a huge reason of why this was. Because this film, it was marketed as the last one, and my goodness, do I hope it is. Although they threw in a random end of credit sequence that thinks that maybe it's not, but please, Disney, don't do it. But even so, they brought all the characters back, and they all got these send-offs that I think were at least acceptable, except for Johnny Depp, which not all that is, Jack Sparrow, not all that is Johnny Depp's fault, but just the way that Jack Sparrow / Johnny Depp behaves throughout this film, it just blows my mind at how lackadaisical he does everything. And this is a guy that's supposed to have charisma and charm and be, sloppy but still know what he's doing. And in this film, it's it's not there. It's just it feels like there's so little effort. And just in what was the last film, he just made Jack Sparrow look like a complete, just a terrible person who doesn't know what he's doing, and like the worst pirate, which he wasn't in the first ones. They joked about that in those first few movies, and now if Norrington comes in and says, that is without doubt the worst pirate I have ever heard of, I would say, yeah, it is. He's terrible. You shouldn't have heard of him because he's bad. And Johnny Depp, my goodness, there's lots of reasons to be pissed off at you. This one only goes in further, and oh my god. That's really the only reason I want to talk about the Razzies. There's like other stuff. Nothing super fun. And as I said, they're pretty much all from like the same 5 movies. So that's those awards. And if you want to hear about my thoughts, some brief thoughts on the Oscars, then you can hang around until right after the break, and we will also get into my top 5 most disappointing young adult book adaptation films, which I'm very excited to talk about because I'm very passionate about many of those, because the young adult books and films are things that I'm have a very big spot in my heart for. So stick around. It's going to be a quick minute or two break, and then we'll be right back. I'm your host, Garret Neal, here with your weekly movie rewind, and you are listening to Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to your weekly movie rewind. I'm your host, Garret Neal, and you are listening to Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. The Oscars, my least favorite award show ever. As I said, I do not like almost all of the films that do well here. Braveheart is by far considered one of the worst Best Picture winners ever, and it is also one of my top 5 favorite films of all time. Although, to be fair, of my top 5, that is probably the closest to getting knocked out by something. I don't know what it would be, but it is definitely the closest. If something does come along, that would probably be the one that got knocked out. The Prince of Egypt is making a big push. I saw it like earlier this year, and I've watched it like 3 times since then, and I'm just like digging the music. But that might just be recency. We'll have to see how that stands the test of time. Regardless, the nominations for the 2018 Best Picture Oscar are Call Me By Your Name, The Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, The Shape of Water, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I have seen most of these films. They didn't go the full 10 this year. They showed some restraint, only went 9. I have seen most of them. I have not seen The Darkest Hour, Phantom Thread, The Post, or The Shape of Water. So I will have seen all of these by the time, I think the actual award show is until March 4th. So I've got time. I just need to make sure I see them before they leave theaters. I will hopefully see most of them this weekend, and then see whichever ones I don't the weekend next. But regardless, I think that this is between The Shape of Water and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Shape of Water, as I mentioned earlier, took home the PGA for the best film. 3 Billboards took home the Golden Globes. The Golden Globes is not really a good predictor for the Oscars, but just the way the momentum is going right now, I think it's definitely between these two, and just the fact that 3 Billboards has been raking in so many awards. I think that one's probably going to win this Best Picture as well, which has been by far my least favorite of the ones that I've seen so far. I Tonya didn't even get nominated. I Tonya, I really liked I Tonya. So I'm sad that didn't get nominated for Best Picture. But if I were choosing out of the ones given, Get Out would win, because I loved Get Out. And I'm glad that the Oscars went a little bit a tiny, tiny bit. Actually, well, I think that Get Out's like a decent amount out of their comfort zone, but they only every other film in that got nominated is just like a classic Oscar movie. But at least they threw one in there for the regular folks, and I appreciate it. If I were doing the nominations, Get Out would be the only one that stayed, and Baby Driver would win Best Picture. But moving on to, I'm not going to go through all the categories, just the major ones. I'm not going to go through the technical category. I mean, Baby Driver is going to win like all the technical categories. Best Actress in a Leading Role, the nominees are Sally Hawkins in The Shape of Water, Frances McDormand for Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, Margot Robbie for I, Tonya, Saoirse Ronan for Lady Bird, and Meryl Streep for The Post. Because why not? This one I think will... I really thought Sally Hawkins was going to get it because she played a deaf person, and the Oscars are all about that added level of difficulty. But Frances McDormand has been like raking in the awards left and right, and I don't see the Oscars really deviating from the mean too much there. So I definitely think she will take that one as well. As I said, I loved I, Tonya, so I would like to see Margot Robbie walk away from that one. But Saoirse Ronan, I would also be totally okay with. Because that was the first... I know she's been in like a decent amount of stuff, but that was the first thing I'd seen her in, and when I found out she was Irish and like I listened to her in an interview, like my mind was blown. Which is really kind of stupid if you think about it, because her first name is extremely Irish. Best Actor in a Leading Role, Timothée Chalamet in Call Me By Your Name, Daniel Day-Lewis in The Phantom Thread, oh god, I'm going to screw this up, Daniel Kaluuya in Get Out, hopefully that's right, I should probably know that, Gary Oldman in Darkest Hour, and Denzel Washington in Roman J. Israel Esquire. Notable not nomination is James Franco, and I think we all know why that is. Gary Oldman is 100% guaranteed, locked and loaded, going to win this award because he went through a lot of makeup and he played Winston Churchill in a World War II film. And he's also Gary Oldman, who probably should have an Oscar by now, but doesn't. So he's going to win. Were I to choose one out of the ones given, I would probably pick Daniel Kaluuya, as I said, because I thought Get Out was great, and especially once you get, okay, first of all, that shot of him, like, in the chair with, like, the one tear coming down, that's, like, oh, that's so good. And especially towards the end of the film as things kind of fell apart, I thought he did a lot of great things there. Denzel Washington, I haven't seen that film, so I can't really say anything. Same with Daniel Day-Lewis, but I'm sure he was very Daniel Day-Lewis-y. And Timothée Chalamet in Call Me By Your Name, I thought he did a very good job, especially like the credits. As the credits are rolling, you literally just sit on a close-up of his face for like 3 minutes as like an Oscar tear just like slowly drips down his cheek. And he did a lot of great things in that film. And I just am throwing in my bias that I didn't really like that film as much as I like Get Out. Although if we're going by like straight up acting, he probably had to do more than Daniel Kaluuya did. And I can't really comment again on Daniel Day-Lewis and Denzel Washington because I haven't seen those films. I haven't seen Darkest Hour either, but I don't really need to because he's gonna win. Actress in a supporting role, Mary J. Blige in Mudbound. I haven't seen Mudbound. It is on Netflix, so I probably should, but I haven't yet. Allison Janney in I, Tonya, Leslie Manville for The Phantom Thread, Laurie Metcalf for Lady Bird, and Octavia Spencer in The Shape of Water. I think this one is a two-women race between Laurie Metcalf and Allison Janney. And I'm going to give it to Allison Janney just because she won the SAG award, and those are generally decent predictors. And having seen I, Tonya, I really liked Allison Janney. Like, she added so much humor to a role who is just like a terrible, terrible person. But Laurie Metcalf, you watch the end of that film, and it's just her in a car and just her going through the emotions as she's driving away from the airport and then deciding to turn around. It was very, very powerful. But yeah, Allison Janney would be my gut reaction. I'm trying to go through these quick. and I'll probably go more in depth later in some other video. And also, we'll be covering the Oscars. I probably, because we usually do right here on Radio DePaul, and I'll probably be there for that as well because, gosh darn it, I have a show on movies. I better show up for the Oscars. And then best, I guess, yeah, this will be the second to last one I go through. The best actor is going to be William Dafoe in The Florida Project, Woody Harrelson in 3 Billboards, Richard Jenkins in The Shape of Water, Christopher Plummer in All the Money in the World, and Sam Rockwell for 3 Billboards. Sam Rockwell is probably going to win because he's won all the other awards. I can't comment on this one too much because I have not seen The Shape of Water or All the Money in the World or The Florida Project. I mean, Christopher Plummer, I think that's mostly won just because if you think about how quickly he had to step in and all that stuff that happened. He's going to get a nomination for that. William Dafoe, Florida Project, I have not seen it. One of my uncle and aunt saw that, and they thought it was, they were not fans, to say the least. I'm sure William Dafoe does a great job, but regardless, I think it's going to go to Sam Rockwell. And Woody Harrelson was very good in 3 Billboards. His character was, because of what happens to his character, led to one of like my least favorite things about that film. But yeah, Sam Rockwell. And the last one I'm going to go through with my gut reactions here is Best Director. We got Christopher Nolan with his first ever Best Director nomination. My goodness, at last, for Dunkirk. Too bad he's not going to win. Jordan Peele, the 5th ever African-American nomination for Get Out. Greta Gerwig, also the 5th ever lady nomination for Lady Bird. Paul Thomas Anderson for The Phantom Thread, and Guillermo del Toro for The Shape of Water. Guillermo del Toro, I think, will easily win this one because, A, he's Guillermo del Toro. Golly, what am I doing? Guillermo, nope, not even close. Guillermo del Toro, that was terrible too, but we're just going to roll with it. Thanks, guys. You're the best out there, whoever's bearing through this. And he's won all the other awards, and he's a known great director, although so is Paul Thomas Anderson and Christopher Nolan have their street cred. Haven't seen The Shape of Water, though, or Phantom Thread, so I can't really say. I liked Get Out, Lady Bird, and Dunkirk. I think that I can't. I'm definitely not like the best judge of directing. I can't really say all like what goes into it. I think all of these films have great performances from their actors, which the director always has a hand in. And Dunkirk, I think, was done very well just to show like how intense some of those moments were, even though you didn't even know the characters, but you were, at least I was still like on the edge of my seat the whole time. Get Out, I mean, we're talking about like the ability to like build up all that suspense and just like that story was so cool. And Lady Bird, I don't know. Lady Bird I didn't like as much as those other two, so it's hard for me to say. But I mean, the performances she got out of all of her actors was great, and especially from Greta Gerwig, who is a actress herself. That's not surprising, and it was shot very well. It must be. I don't know. It would make sense, but I couldn't really say personally because I'm getting better, but I'm still not great at noticing all those sorts of things. Regardless, Guillermo del Toro is probably going to win that one. So those are my brief rundowns of the major awards. You can find all the rest if you would like in your own time. And those are my gut reaction, right off the top of my head thoughts on those. And now, the next section, we're going to go right on to the new releases. There's 2 releases this week. One is going to be an expansion. Another one is going to be a full release. The expansion is Hostiles, which is the new Christian Bale film. It's kind of a cowboy Indian type film. It's certainly Western from all the reviews that I've read. It's violent, very graphic, very slow running, and has all the hallmarks of the Western. A lot of them were saying that it's it's slow almost to the point like it's trying very hard to prove it's a Western. It's like, yeah, see, we're slow burn, suspense. This one, again, since I'm still going to be trying to catch up on Oscar movies this weekend, I'm probably not going to see this one. This has a 65 Metacritic and a 7.2 on IMDb right now. It said it was already in limited release. It entered limited release in December 22nd. So far, it has made $1.3 million. And this week, it will expand into, I think it was like 2,800 theaters. Then the next release, which may dethrone Jumanji at the top of the box office. I think this one has the best chance. Eventually. There's no huge movies coming out until Black Panther, but at some point, Jumanji's just been out so long, eventually people are going to want to see something else. Even though there's not really a whole lot in that PG-13 action comedy genre right now. But Maze Runner: The Death Cure is coming out. This one is the final Maze Runner film, and maybe the final we'll see in a long while in the young adult dystopian movies, and just kind of the young adult based on book films in general will probably keep going, because there are some decent one of those. But as far as the dystopian ones, those have not gone well. Talking about Hunger Games, the Divergent series, Maze Runner's actually done pretty well. Especially compared to Divergent, obviously. But it made me want to do a top 5 list. I was going to do top 5 best young adult films. I didn't narrow it to dystopian because there aren't that many of those. But I was going to do top 5 best young adult based on a book films, but adapted. I would have had to discount Harry Potter because that probably wouldn't have been the top 5, and there was, I don't know, it just didn't seem very exciting. So I did the top 5 worst, which I'm very passionate about. So much disappointment in all of these films. Number 5, Aragon. Not only do I blame this for me growing up and never always pronouncing Aragorn from Lord of the Rings name wrong, but also this to be fair, I never read this book. My sister was pretty big on this book series. This was the one with dragons, and the dragons and the people have connections, and there's this, but dragons are supposed to be dead, but this one peasant kid finds an egg and bonds with the dragon, and it was just such a, I was very excited because it was a fantasy film and it had Jeremy Irons in it, who I am a huge fan of. But then Jeremy Irons died and I was sad, and then the dragon talked, but it didn't, none of its lines were ever important to the film. It would just say things that we already knew or had already been said, and it was this one I have the least attachment to, but I just remember it not being a very good film, so I threw it on there. Number 4 is a collection. It's number 4 is just when Hollywood tried to make Alex Pettyfer a thing. I don't know how many of you remember this, but especially in 2011, this guy was in I Am Number 4 and Beastly, neither of which I read the books for, but I did go see I Am Number 4, and oh my gosh, it was a terrible movie. But the thing I'm more mad about is he was in 2008, he was in Stormbreaker, which if any of you read the Alex Rider novels growing up, those things were the bomb.com. We're talking about James Bond, but he was a kid, he was my age. I was 11-year-old me was yeah, dude, I'm gonna grow up, I'm gonna be Alex Rider. It's gonna turn out my dad was a secret spy who died earlier in my life, and I'm gonna go to school and get trained to be a spy, and it's gonna be incredible. And then they made a movie out of it, and I was so pumped. And then this guy played him, and it was just, he had no no charisma, and he was the reason that the Alex Rider film franchise died pretty much before it even started. I don't know if they ever would have been able to make it. I mean, that book series, if it ended at like book 6, which was Archangel, I think, that would have been... No, Scorpio is where it should have ended. Then Archangel was where, like, he came back to life. And I was like, ugh, hate it when that happens. And then they kept it going to, like, 13 or 14 books. And they were all pretty good. But if it ended at Scorpio, would have been money. But regardless, Alex Pettyfer, he's in 3 young adult adaptations that were all very bad. And he also killed one of my favorite book franchises when I was a kid. And he killed him before he even started. Number 3... Mockingjay Parts 1 and 2. The first Hunger Games book, I loved all the Hunger Games books. The first film was very promising, and I liked it a lot. And then Catching Fire came out, and I was not very excited about that. Granted, that was my least favorite book, but the film was... I enjoyed the film far more than I enjoyed the book, as far as that one goes. But then the next two, like, I just didn't even care enough to even see them out in theaters. And then when I did see them, I was like, wow, I might as well just not see them. And I didn't even, like, it's just like considering how huge the Hunger Games book series was and how they could botch those closing chapters. Even though I know in general Mockingjay was the least popular book, I personally enjoyed it almost as much as the first one. But it bothers me. And then number 2 is going to be Cirque du Freak, The Vampire's Assistant. This one was definitely on like the lower level, and the book series itself again was another one that like went on forever, which I didn't read all of, but I did read the first 3, which is what this first movie was based on. But, like, it might well as not have been. Because, I mean, you can barely cram in 1 book into 1 movie. You try and cram 3 in, and it was like, what's even happening right now? I have no idea what's going on. So this one was about, like, this kid who goes to, like, this cool fair and, like, this circus type thing and meets this guy, and he ends up getting turned into a vampire, and he has to, like, fake his death. And the first book was actually, like, it was supremely interesting, and it kind of, like, died off, and I didn't keep up with it. But it was a really cool concept, and did not transition over to films, and they tried to pack in way too much into one thing. Number 1. Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. So, young me, not even young me, now me, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, because that's the later one, but the Percy Jackson Lightning Thief book series, far and away my favorite book series I have ever read. I still, to this day, read any in that series that Rick Riordan writes. I'm a book behind. I have not read the final Magnus Chase in the Gods of Asgard series, and I have not read the second Apollo is Now a Human book series. But I've read all the other ones, and I will read those eventually. But this series transformed my life. I was so excited that one day I was going to wake up and that a Greek god was going to claim me, and I was going to be a demigod, and like the parents, I thought my parents weren't really, one of my parents is actually a god, and I was going to have powers, and it was going to be awesome. I was going to be able to like shoot lightning out of my hands, and that didn't happen, which was disappointing. But hey, fingers crossed, still keeping up hope. And then they made a movie out of it. And I mean, I think that if you just take this movie as its own, it's not bad. It had Logan Lerman and Brandon T. Jackson, who both did good jobs. And Logan Lerman, I mean, he would be in one of my top 5 favorite young adult films, The Percy Being a Wallflower. He did great there, but they did good acting jobs. It also had that lady who was also in San Andreas, who I cannot remember the name of, but she did a fine job as well. But it's just, it had almost nothing to do with the book. It failed completely, in capturing that magic of wanting to be a like the ability that almost anyone could be a demigod, and the magic of being one and the joy. There was no atmosphere in Camp Half-Blood somewhere where it's like, I wanted to go there so bad. And this is like my Harry Potter, where it's like something like, I want to go to Hogwarts, I want to be there. And like the movies capture that. You watch the first Harry Potter film and you hear that wonderful score, that theme as the boats ride across the river into Hogwarts, and that's like, that puts you there. And that puts you in that universe. This movie failed to do that completely, and it just dispatched from the book so much. There were so many cool moments in the book that I was so excited to see that didn't show up at all. The scene in the Lotus Hotel was so wacky. The effects were pretty terrible, and the action scenes were so disappointing. And I mean, as I said, I think it's okay if you take it separate from the book, but just the fact that I was so invested in this book series, and for the movie to be so disappointing and just depart from the series in every way. I mean, they tried to almost tell like the whole book series in that one movie, and they just took 3 things that happened in the first book and they made it like a series of things that the people had to go through. They had to find like these pearls. It was like, what? And then like Luke, who was the main bad guy, came at the end and they killed him. I'm like, but that doesn't happen until like the 5th book. So annoying. So, Maze Runner, Death Cure, coming out. It has a 7.2 on IMDb right now, 54 on Metacritic. From the reviews that I've read, because I'm trying to do a better job of like actually reading into some of these reviews now, instead of just looking at the numbers, because that's something I hate, when people just look at the numbers and they write the movie off. I mean, obviously when I can, I'll actually go see the movie. But as this is not out yet, I do not have access to screenings because I'm not a huge movie critic, unfortunately. But it seems like it's well acted, well directed, and it's done well, but it's not exceptional at anything. And it also, at 2.5 hours, most people are saying that it's far too long. And then if it was 2 hours about, it would fare the movie much better. The previous 2, which both opened in September, this one was actually delayed a little bit because the lead actor was injured. And they had to set things back. But the first 2 both opened in about 3,700 theaters. This one's going to be 3,800. And the first one opened to 32.5 million. The second one, 30 million. So we'll probably get, as sequels do, we'll probably get a little less than both of those. I believe a little under 30 million. But should still do fairly well, and I think this will be the film that will finally dethrone Jumanji at the top, and it might hold on. It's definitely going to hold on next week. The only thing, in 2 weeks, 50 Shades free. Oh yeah. That might dethrone it. And then finally, after that, we get Black Panther and Early Man, an Aardman film. I love Aardman. Claymation, so good. Wallace and Gromit changed lives, man. So, even I hope it's good. The last Aardman film, Pirates, was not as good as I would have liked it. And then eventually we'll get into March. Once March starts, it's like home stretch. I'm so excited. But regardless, those are the new releases, and that's going to do it in a extra long special edition Oscar episode of your weekly movie rewind. Thank you everyone who listened. There was a lot to get to this episode, and we made it through within my hour time, which I don't always use, but I did this week. I'm your host, Garret Neal, and you were listening to Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection.